Welcome to Necessi-Tea. I'm Marguerite Pierce.
And I'm Lindsay Jackson. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Raeven Western. Welcome, Raeven.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're very excited to have you here. I want to just share how I even know Raeven. I don't know what social media platform it was, but it must have been in the early 2000s, maybe 2011. And you had Dream Pusher, and you were running workshops for girls. So I reached out, had you come and run a workshop at my organization where I worked, and also had her come speak at our Young Women's Brunch. And that was also very inspirational. So as I witnessed Raeven do her work, I said, what is this that Raeven is doing? And found out that that was coaching, and that's how I got introduced to IPAC. So to see how the universe connect us, and you also knew or
so my first interaction, or I saw you, I don't think we interacted, was at an orientation for the Future Project. Mm-hmm. I think they were doing like their kickoff, I don't know, it must have been like around the same time you're saying, like 2011, maybe 2010 or so. And I was like a new coach or new mentor for like a high school student, and they had a orientation gathering, and you stood up and you asked a question. I don't remember what it was, but I just remember your name, right? And then I think I came across you again at, I don't know, did you ever go to like Women Who Crush It? Tanny Chambers?
I did. I think I went to her first one.
Okay, because I think I might have crossed paths with you there too. And then like I found out like you guys knew each other, and I was like, okay, this is meant to be. Yeah, meant to be. So awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled because I know the conversation that you two ladies are about to bring up, it's just going to, I'm already excited.
Awesome. So I think first let's start with the name, right? Dream Pusher?
Dream Pusher, yes.
Where did that come from?
I realized I had a passion for, one, cheering people on. That was one of my natural kind of things that I've always have done growing up. And just being an advocate for people in their dreams and realizing that there was a space to fill to support people in their dreams, because that was not something that I had growing up. So I just kind of tagged myself as Dream Pusher. This was also within the coming age of social media. Mm-hmm. So giving myself a name, but also not just a name, but an opportunity to expand the work behind doing that stuff.
Right.
So that's where Dream Pusher came.
That's awesome. I love it. Just
how have you embodied that maybe for yourself, and then like maybe an example of how you implement that for other people?
I think it's important that you are what you advocate, right? You do the work. You not just speak it and you not just preach it, but you actually embody it so that you understand it in greater depth. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's one, understanding a theory, because I think in life we always have these aha moments that we're like, oh, okay, but then we practice it and then it expands even more. So for me, it's being able to understand what I'm talking about so that I can elaborate it, because I think that anything that I kind of share comes from me understanding it at a deeper level, not just having an aha moment, but just really practicing it and understanding it and understanding the strength that it holds for me. Because I think that that's one of my things. I love to communicate. I love to share. I love to be vulnerable. And my vulnerability comes from learning from my own past.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you've done to get a deeper understanding of something?
I think that it's just part of who I am. I'm an overthinker. And I think that's also one of my strengths. Like, I don't think of it as one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh, I overthink everything. It drives me crazy. No, I think that for me, and when I reflect on my life, overthinking, I get it. Things start to make sense. I like to analyze things. I like to understand things. I like to understand, my choices and how I am participating within something that is causing something to also happen. Because there's things that also happen to us, but then it's like, okay, well, how was I participating?
Right.
Because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do that again. I don't ever want to experience that again. So it's like, okay, what was I doing? Who was I being? What perception was I narrating that was allowing me to experience it the way I had experienced it? And then wanting to say, okay, I want to write a new narrative. What does that look like?
Wow, that sounds like what I'm hearing is like accountability is like the central focus of like your process.
Well, yeah, because we can only be accountable for ourselves, right?
Correct.
We can only be responsible for ourselves. So I try very hard, and not to say I'm always great at it, but that's my thing. Like, I want to understand, because there's a lot of things that I go through where I'm like, we're not going to do that again. So let's understand the story. Let's break it down and get really deep with what it is. And I think for me, like, I like doing it.
Yeah.
Because it helps me shift the narrative. It helps me, understand from where I am to where I want to be. And it keeps me moving forward.
And it sounds like not just shifting that narrative for yourself, but you're passionate about helping other people shift that narrative. Yeah. And you do so through an experience called Intimate Conversations. So can you tell us a little bit about what that does?
Yes. So Intimate Conversations was born out of two beliefs. That one, empower women. And what you reveal, you heal. And I think for me, after motherhood, it hit me hard. Not so much motherhood, because taking care of Celine was easy. It was taking care of myself that got really difficult. Not so much taking care of my family, but the things that happened afterwards and just kind of grasping it. I had a hard time being a mother, and then being a mother and being single, then being a mother single, and then moving out on my own for the first time with a child, and then, balancing work, because now my finances just increased because now I'm on my own, right? And then my stepfather had just passed, and my mother moved in with me, and seeing her grieve, like, there was just so many things one after another. I was like, I can't deal with all of this. Like, I really had to just stop and understand, just deal with what was on my plate at first, and then realize I was like, okay, I can't, this relationship that I'm having with myself has to change. And it came from me being vulnerable, but not in a way where, because I think vulnerability kind of splits up into two directions. Like, we can be vulnerable and make bad choices, but we can also be vulnerable and make empowering choices. So I realized how vulnerable I was, and it came from one person one day just saying, "Hey, Raeven, how are you?" And hearing myself over and over, always saying, yeah, I'm fine. But having like a truth bomb. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not fine. Like, this was not the way I thought my life was going to be as a mother. And I was like, I'm not fine. And I can even picture myself to this day, like, just sitting on my floor and realizing that I'm broken. And not in a way where, I think we have this false identity of being broken.
What broken is. Yeah.
But I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so many pieces of me that need healing, that need fixing. And that was the first time where I was able to, like, see these pieces not on me, but, I guess in front of me. And I was like, okay, there are pieces. Anything that something that falls, it breaks into pieces. And that's what I felt. I felt like I was in pieces. And I was like, okay, there's pieces of me that I don't want this anymore. But then there's pieces of me that I need to start acknowledging more. But also being able to give every piece the same attention. Right. And realizing that the missing piece of that puzzle was love. So how do I, going through it with my daughter's father at the time and feeling triggered with him many times and wondering, why am I feeling triggered? Why does this hurt the way it does? All right, let me look at this piece. Understanding that story, then fact-checking it and realizing that, oh, that's not even true. Why am I letting that affect me? Okay, so then we get to move that piece to the side. And then I think it was about 1.5 years of just doing that work, because it was like, once you've had one piece where you were like, okay, I got this, something else got triggered. And I was like, I thought we were good. So I'm like, okay, we got to do this again. All right, we'll come back. We'll just repeat the past. Well, it was that. It was fixing one piece, then realizing there was another piece that was triggered. And then just like, I want to say a good 1.5 years of that just being my story. And I'm like, all right, we're just going to have to get through this. We're just going to have to do this. And being in court with my daughter's father, even with that was very triggering for me. So just going through that made me realize that, okay, there's something in me that's happening, and I'm just going to roll with it. I'm just going to continue to do whatever this is so that I can move forward. And so Intimate Conversations came from being vulnerable and realizing the opportunity that there is in being vulnerable and sharing your story, but also trying to kind of connect the dots to a silver lining, and realizing how empowering that was for me, how freeing it was for me, and how healing it was for me, and realizing that this is an opportunity for other people to do the same. So prior to motherhood, I was coaching. Come motherhood, I stopped. So here I was like, there's an opportunity here. So I was like, I want to bring women together, because I realized that as women, we're not that vulnerable. We don't want to share. There's a lot of people who kind of want to I think through family, we learn to kind of bottle things up. And for me, being able to share and also having other women say, oh my gosh, I get that. Thank you. I didn't realize that. Realizing that in me sharing, it helped other women identify their story, connect to the dots to their own story, feel better about their story. So I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. I really want to bring people together to be able to talk about topics that are sensitive, that are hard, that we're not constantly talking about. Right. And just see what happens. And it was a good turnout. So
yeah, no, I think. Oh, okay.
So I wanted to be able to have a pause so I could fix that. Somehow
it's okay.
Dark on us. So.
Yeah, usually it didn't do that before.
No, it didn't.
Wow, it's so loud in those headphones.
I know. I could take a sip of my coconut water.
Oh gosh, sometimes I start talking and I forgot where I started from. If you
really get into it.
Yeah.
I like your shirt, Linz.
Thank you.
You ladies work really well together.
Thank you.
Yes.
There we go. That's perfect. Okay.
There
we go. All right. Sorry about that.
I was just about to ask a question, so I still have it in my mind. So
good.
We're good.
Okay.
So in hearing you describe, how intimate conversations come about, and I think the one of the last few things you said, about women and the fear of being vulnerable, and I think what it comes down to is really the misconception and the fear of being judged by whatever it is you're feeling or you're thinking. But I've found in my experience that when I share vulnerable moments or moments of transparency, or when others do the same for me, there is always a moment of relation, right? That I can relate to you or you can relate to me. So it's just how can we reinforce that we become more vulnerable and transparent with one another, which would lead to healing or any other type of benefit.
I think that we have to do the work, right? It has to start with us to be able to do that work so that we can hold an accountable space for ourselves, but then we can also hold an account. We can be accountable for, let me take that back, not be accountable, but have a supportive space for someone else to be accountable in their own life. And I think that the narrative around vulnerability, we need more examples of people being transparent, people being vulnerable, but there needs to be a silver lining that's attached to that vulnerability, because it's not just about sharing. Right. It's about, seeing the silver line in something because you want to grow from it. You want to expand from it. And I think that we're so afraid of vulnerability because, again, we have made bad choices. We get exposed, and people don't like to be exposed. But the thing is that we're going to be judged anyway. I learned that early on. It doesn't matter. You're going to be judged anyway. So for me, it's more important for me to live my truth and to support the relationship that I'm having within. And I can only do that by being authentic and being honest. And so that's the relationship I want to have with myself. And if that's not something that it's easy for someone else, I'm in a space where I practice enough self-love to say, okay, that's where you are at your journey. You can't do anything
not
about
take
that.
it personally.
Yeah.
Right. And so you bill yourself as a self-love advocate. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, that was part of my journey as well, and realizing that I think one New Year, I was like, okay, as we always do, come New Year, we reflect, and I was like, okay, what was the missing link within my past journey? What did my last journey look like? So there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of negative self-talk or victimizing with myself, and I was like, where was the love? I was like, I don't even know what that looks like. So I kind of just opened up myself to this journey of, I want a new relationship with myself, and I want it to be one that includes love. like real self-love.
Deep
like not
self-love.
Yeah,
yes.
like not the, I'm going to go get a manicure, pedicure. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Even what Intimate Conversations talk was about, this upcoming talk was expanding that talk on self-love beyond the trips to the salon and the gym, because while it's important for our cute selves to be acknowledged, but it's also so much more important for our inner selves to be acknowledged. And for me, what self-love looks like, it's practicing what we identify as love, kindness, forgiveness, understanding, acceptance, and those healthy forms of validation, and are just having those moments where I need a hug, and literally giving myself a hug, because touch is so important, right? And now more than ever, we should
only be
hugging ourselves.
Yes.
But yeah, and really kind of, challenging myself to, if I am having a hard day, to sit and say, okay, what do you need right now? Because love looks different for us every single day. Right. So being able to ask myself, what do you need, Raeven? What do you need right now to support the space that you're in? Okay, you're having a hard day. How about you look back at everything that you've just done and acknowledge the kick-ass that you are?
So then you go right to gratitude, which is something you also push.
Well, that's another act of love, right? Yeah. Gratitude, and being able to, and even with gratitude, that's almost like a different story, because I realized that in holding a space of gratitude, better things just happen for me.
Correct.
Energy is everything. Absolutely. And we understand that, right? So gratitude and love are the highest forms of energy that you can kind of vibrate on. So I'm like, ooh, life looks good here. So for me, it's just learning how to lean on that more, no matter what direction my life goes into. Because even with trust is a form of love. Faith is a form of love.
Right.
And being able to support myself and my relationship by doing things that are constantly refilling that cup, because when those cups are empty, I start leaning on fear. Right. And if I'm leaning on fear, my conversation is also around fear. Correct. And my vision is just like, it's broken. So I'm just like, no, faith feels really good, and gratitude, and let me just stop. Let me stop and count the blessings right now, because as long as I'm breathing, I've got blessings to count. As long as, rent's paid, I got blessings to count, or even the minimal, because there's been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have any work lined up. What am I going to do? Am I going to sit and be scared, or I'm going to sit and trust on the things that I know that are important for me to not only lift my spirit, but also move me forward?
So when you think about the people who follow you and participate in your workshops, what have you seen your work do for other people? How have you seen your push for gratitude and your push for self-love and your push for even having those intimate conversations change how people see things or just even experience their own life?
I kind of think it's created an interest for people to want to support their own relationship, to realize that, oh, wow, I need to validate myself, or become more responsible and intentional about the relationship that you have with yourself, and seeing people step aside and do those things for themselves. Because it's important to have a community and be there for each other, because that's important, but it's also so much more important to seek that validation and do that work within. And not sometime, but all the time, right? Because I think that self-love, we have these pockets of times that we kind of need some self-love. But for me, it goes beyond that by adding that D at the end to say self-loved, right? To be responsible and be intentional about the relationship, not sometime, but every single day, because we want to be in relationships where we can do that for people and where people can do that for us. But it changes the game when you start doing it for yourself.
And being consistent about it, and not just waiting until you're at a low to be like, oh, I need to pour into myself. If you do it kind of consistently, maybe those moments that would push you to your low moment, you won't get as low prior.
That, and you bounce back faster.
Right,
For me, I've realized that, I have hard days, or I have things that happen, but so then I immediately know that I have some things to do, or I can even look back and say, I haven't done anything in this past week, which I understand why I feel like this today.
Right.
Like, I haven't poured into myself. I haven't prayed. I haven't spent time with myself. I haven't even looked in the mirror and say, you got this, right? Like, those small little things, you don't need to make an appointment for it.
Right.
If it's a priority for you to be there for someone else in a relationship, why isn't it a priority to be there for yourself? And I realized that in being there for myself, supported and expanded the relationship I was having with other people even more so, which made that love feel even, solid. So it's like, oh, wait, if I'm pouring into myself, I'm really going to get to pour into you in a way that's different. And not only that, I'm also going to receive what you have for me in a grander way. Yeah. So it's like it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and I think of all three of us are moms, right? So we have little people who are watching us. How have you seen your own acts of, gratitude and self-love show up in your daughter?
Pretty, they're their own people. No
for sure.
What.
Absolutely.
I always wonder what this relationship between us will stem from her as she gets older, because I know, because even now I'm like, is this a relationship you want to have with me? I know she's gonna make fun of me when we get older, but I'm like, you yelling at me right now, 6-year-old girl.
Right.
Like, is this a relationship you want us to have, where it's like we're at a disconnect? And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, all right then. Can we talk about this? Can we be more supportive toward each other? So I have no idea how that's gonna show up in her life later, but it can't be a bad thing. I know whoever she's with is gonna be like, it's your fault. But yeah, I just, it's hard to say because they're so young.
Yeah, but like, what are some maybe sprinkles of things that maybe you've seen her do or hear her say? I think one time in your Insta story, she wanted to write in a gratitude journal, right?
Well, a friend of ours got her a gratitude journal for her birthday, which I thought was so amazing. And and one morning, randomly, she kind of just picked it up. So I think now I want to start being mindful of actually doing activities with her where we can, where these conversations are instilled in what we're doing. But right now I'm kind of getting grounded in it myself. So yeah, we'll see. But she's interesting because she once said to me, she was like, I'm raising you. And I was like, you have no idea.
Wow. That is so
crazy.
She's aware.
She is.
No,
she is. Dope. But you have an older little girl. And they're their own people.
For sure.
But sometimes she will repeat some things to me and I'm like, yep, can't lie.
And put us right in check, right? When we kind of go off our track.
Always.
They are there to raise us, to kind of make us aware, of who we are and who we're becoming and what our little habits are.
Yeah.
And they will call us out on it. Not necessarily in a malicious way, right?
No.
But making us aware.
That, and also I think she pours into me the way I poured into her, which I feel it. Like I see it and I'm like, that's me. That's me. That she's giving me what I've always given me, where she comes and gives me the loves and the hugs and she's she's just very sweet and very just loving, and I'm like, I'm doing something right.
Right. Okay. Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. To revel in the return of
it's
almost like a return on investment, right? Like whatever you're pouring into your kid is what they're going to give you back. And
it's amazing to see her sometimes like, it's okay, Mom. That's fine. It's cool. Like, her level of patience or her appreciation for things, I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, that's funny because hearing you describe this it's making me think of a moment of exchange with Simone, because Simone is only 3. She'll be 4 in May. And so, one day she was asking me to pick her up. And so she's like, I don't know, she's like 35 pounds, so she's not that light anymore. So I was like, I was emphasizing how heavy she was. I was like, oh, well, you've been eating bricks. And I carried her and we go into the kitchen and she said, Mommy, well, when you get little, I'll pick you up.
Oh.
My gosh. Because sometimes we do shrink. Sometimes we get small.
Like that. And I hang on to it. Yeah. I hang on to it.
Her love to to know, hey, Mom, I will carry you.
Right.
Figuratively,
I will return the favor.
Yes.
Like in her little world, she was like, oh, well, I can do this for you at some point in the future.
And thank you for doing this for me, right? Because I'll get you back later.
I got you, Mom.
Yeah. Oh.
It's just that...
The sugar sometimes.
Yes, it's great.
It is. So you were recently on, was that
Project Runway? Yes. Because you also model on top of everything else.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that, right? That's awesome. But when you think about self-love, and I think of the stereotypes that are around just models, right? That they believe that models have low confidence or low self-esteem.
Oh, sure.
Right?
100% we do.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, so how do you maybe even, what do you think of that?
Well, we're in a business that is more so for our looks than who we are, internally or for our brains. So yeah. And not only that, you have we live in New York City, so this is a huge modeling hub where a lot of people come internationally into New York just to model and do this work. So you're up against other girls, and I mean it's been one heck of a ride because you do get hard on yourself. I imagine as any other thing that you could do, you get hard on yourself sometimes. But because there's so much competition that's right in front of your face, and these women are gorgeous, you do question yourself when you're not getting booked, or when things are not going a certain way, or when people just say no after a long time. That gets on you, that pounds on your conscience. But I think that I've been in this business so long that there's a part of me that is understanding of what this business is. Right. But then there's a part of me that also does the work, right? Because again, it goes back to self-love of being able to get grounded in who you are, validating your own self, supporting yourself when things aren't lined up. What's the conversation I'm having with myself? Right. In words where it's like, okay, there aren't any bookings. I don't have any checks lined up. Like, that relationship is still important to me, and that still comes down to self-love. Right. How am I being intentional and responsible with the relationship I'm having within when the things on the outside don't look like they're working for me?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what are some of the things you enjoy about being a model or being part of that space and being part of that industry?
I think that let me see. I think modeling has probably helped me become more of a person than I probably would have been in another space, because you get to be so vibrant and alive. And, one of my goals this year is to expand how I show up in front of the camera and being comfortable, because just because you model, there's still levels where you can expand who you are and how you show up in the work that you do. So for me now, seeing that work has been increasing, thank you God, things have been shifting in the last 2 years. Now I'm like, oh, this is exciting. Now I'm back to doing work that I didn't think I was going to do for a long time, because I had got stuck in this cycle of just doing showroom. Like, I started modeling and I was doing print work and I was traveling, and then all of a sudden I just started doing showroom, and the castings that I was getting, I wasn't getting booked for anything. Wow. And I got dropped from my agency, which I get because I wasn't working. And I was freelancing for a year, and I was like, this freelance life is not for me. I respect the models that can do that and get their hustle on. I was like, this isn't for me. I need an agency. So realizing that there's such a correlation between the relationship that you have within and the things that happen around you. Like, really believing that thoughts do become things and practicing that. And I'm like, all right, I've got to step my game up. I've got to feel confident, because if I'm not feeling confident about myself and also loving on myself, I just don't see it happening for me. And that was my connection. And everyone's story is different, but for me, that was my connection, and being able to say, okay, we stepped the game up. So I thankfully got signed with another agency, and all they do is print work. So even going into that, there was some insecurities and doubts and that I had to face. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel inadequate. I don't feel like I'm not going to get this. It's been such a long time since I've been in front of the camera with a client. And though I take pictures, some of it is just natural. Like, it's like riding a bike. There's certain things that I can do in front of the camera, but I'm like, I want new clients. Right. I want to start traveling. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to start opening up. And I think that for me, it was like, okay, we got to keep working on the inside. It's that relationship with yourself, of loving yourself. And I realized the more that I love myself, the more I open up, and the more I'm freer in front of the camera, where there's a natural feeling with me that it's exciting now, because I didn't have that before. Yeah. I was still, I felt very inadequate, maybe anywhere from like 5 to 10 years ago. Very inadequate. And even now, like, anytime I get a booking and a casting, I'm excited, because this is a opportunity for a preparation for the next casting or the next job. Like, I don't hold things so serious. Things aren't so serious for me. Things aren't so black and white for me. I'm open. I'm claiming that great things are happening for me this year. The new story is being written, and I need to also be a part of that story that's writing new things for myself. Right.
So you do a lot of self-reflecting, a lot of, inner work. What are some questions that you think people should ask themselves as they start to look inwards and they want to build that strength within themselves?
I think it's almost like I think this is an IPEC thing that has stuck with me, where it's like, okay, anytime I feel like I'm stuck, one of the things I go back to is saying, okay, where am I right now? What is happening in my life right now? Where do I want to go from here? What does moving forward look like? So being able to identify that, and now and future, those are the things I would ask. I would want people to ask themselves, what do you want for yourself? Because sometimes we can't answer that question. Right. So just being real honest and open with yourself, and having that little quiet time to connect, and also being able to ask yourself, what do I need right now in this moment for me? Check in.
Yeah, that kind of questioning kind of pulls you forward a little bit, even if it's just one step, that you're not like stuck in the problem or in the negative space. Like, you got to kind of take yourself out of it.
And I think IPAC has taught us to just be able to lay the cards on the table without judgment, without, questioning them, or, putting any label on them. And
just experience.
Yeah. And that for me it's been easy for me. And sometimes I think even with coaching, that's been one of the things where I'm like, okay, we're just laying the cards out on the table. We're not judging them. It's okay. And we're going to decide which cards we want to keep and which ones we don't need anymore. And just have an honest conversation around that. And I think that's the best thing you can do, is kind of check in and say, what's going on? What do I need? Yeah. Okay, I'm afraid.
What would be maybe because those are great questions, and some, it may seem like this is a little overwhelming, right? What do I want for myself, later, right? Even if it's later in this moment, later in this day. What would be something that would bring me right into this moment? Maybe if I am struggling with my self-love and how I'm feeling about myself right now in this moment, what's a good question to bring me back? Or maybe an affirmation, because you also do those affirmation challenges.
Right. I do. I think it's important to speak into what you're doing, right? But I think that it's not just about speaking into what you want. Like, affirmations are super important to me, but if your belief is not connected with that affirmation, it's not going to stick. So it doesn't matter. Right. Like, your belief is always going to be more powerful than an affirmation. So it's really being able to acknowledge what is happening right now, right? Okay, I'm experiencing fear. So what can I do in this space right now with experiencing fear? So I can go and say, all right, I have a fear. Let me lean on the affirmation. Or I could fact check it and say, what is it that I'm afraid of? Well, that's not even true.
I love the fact checking, right? Because it's always about looking for evidence to challenge that belief that we have. Because a lot of the times the beliefs that we have that are in our mind are not...
We made them up.
Right. Yeah. The stories that we choose to believe in to stay in our fear.
Yeah.
And sometimes the fear is comfortable. Right? It's getting out of it that's like the hard work.
Right, exactly. And I realize like fear and those emotions are almost like comfort food.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to going to them during that time that it's like, okay, it's so easy for me to go into the space of fear because that's what I always do. It's so easy for me to guilt or shame myself because that's what I've always done. So, even for me, I'm always figuring out my life and saying, okay, what is going on? Like, I really want to know the story. Like, I'm like, the way we're so invested in knowing everyone else's business, I want to know my business and I want to know my story. So it's like, we have the energy to do that for other people. We damn sure to have the energy to do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's just being able to disconnect, right? Because I think that with social media, we can't even finish a thought. We can't even remember an idea or expand an idea because we're so invested in everyone else's life. So being able to disconnect, sometimes I have to delete the app altogether because I'm just like, I need the next 24 hours to be about me, right? Because if I'm trying to better myself, trust me, I'm bettering the relationships that I'm having on the outside too. So it's just being able to say, what do I need? All right, there's too much noise on the outside. I got to disconnect. Or I'm afraid. Or I'm projecting something negative. So let me start projecting something positive. So once you know what it is that's not working, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I can kind of do to counterbalance what is going on in my life right now? Do I need to speak to somebody? Do I need a vent? Do I need some type of validation? Do I just need to stop? And, for me, I like writing everything out because if it's too overwhelming in my thoughts,
it can get...
Yeah, being able to write it out lets me see it better. Like, I can analyze it in a different way where I'm just like, okay, I get that. That makes sense. And I needed to let that out.
Right.
I like.
No, like, this has been fantastic. Like, you've really poured into us. Like, I know I'm benefiting from a lot of what you shared, and I know everybody listening will too. So for the folks that want to keep up with you and know what's going on in your world, how can they stay in touch?
Instagram is probably the best way. I am Dream Pusher on Instagram. And yeah, DM me, shoot me a message, say hello.
And that's where they can find out about
anything that I'm doing.
Okay.
I share with it. I'm as vulnerable as one can be.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
this
ladies.
was so awesome. Thank you so much, Raeven.
Yay, thank you.
And now it's tea time. Tea is for talk. Talk intimately with yourself and others to find a deeper understanding.
E is for empathy, which leads to a healthy vulnerability.
A is for acceptance. Accept where you are right now and look to gratitude to move you forward.
Thanks for listening. And if you haven't already, stop what you're doing and subscribe to our podcast now. And if you want to follow us on social media, that's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, you can do so at Necessi-Tea Podcast. Thanks for listening.